Geordie Journos back here at the Newcastle United training ground where Eddie Howe has just done his pre-match press conference ahead of Chelsea. Me, Jordan and Liam spoke the other day about Newcastle's injury situation. We got a little bit more light shed on that by Eddie Howe, who's notoriously coy on that sort of thing. But Jordan, few updates. What did you glean from what Eddie Howe had to say?
Yeah, before we get into the updates, I just want to compliment us on our trims actually.
I was going to say,
both had fresh
fresh trims.
You'll see from the video of the day, if you look back at the other video, we've all had a haircut.
Bust mattress.
Yeah, it was I. So yeah, onto the proper stuff. Injuries. Triple injury boost, I think I've called it, if you can't call it that. I have anyway. Kieran Trippier available to play tomorrow. Played 90 minutes for England last week against Malta. Then obviously withdrew from the squad because of a personal matter. Now that'll remain private, whatever it is, but the good news is that he's trained at the club's training ground this week and will be available for selection tomorrow. The second one, Fabinho, who I think it looked like he picked up a bit of a hamstring injury at Bournemouth. He went down in the early stages, played on, linked up with Switzerland not long after, and then ended up sitting out of the Israel game, was then an unused substitute against Kosovo and Romania. But again, no issue with him. The player you'd expect to start on that back line alongside Kieran Trippier tomorrow. And the final one, Miguel Almiron, who went off after half an hour against Bournemouth. Hamstring injury. It was a grade 1 hamstring injury, so he pulled out of the Paraguay squad 2 weeks. The 2 weeks break has allowed him to recover. And again, probably in line to start tomorrow, given that Newcastle have got a lack of bodies. And then two players that Eddie Howe was a little bit more coy on. Coy on Alexander Isak. Was asked directly about him, so he didn't want to give too much away. Then spoke sort of about the wider injury picture, but reading between the lines, if you like, or the knowledge that we think we have. Again, I think Alexander Isak will be available tomorrow if he gets through at training session today, which I'd imagine should be fine. So that's a huge boost for Newcastle, as we spoke about in that video with Callum Wilson, at the video on Thursday. Callum Wilson, with him out injured, Isak comes back as the club's only fit striker. I mean, just talking sort of about that situation, Dom, because of the Callum Wilson and his absence, Alexander Isak, I think there was a phrase used in the press comments there, will have to be wrapped up in cotton wool. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, particularly as it's a recurring injury as well that he's suffered. He obviously had one the last international break when he was away with Sweden, and then picked it up again, I think the West Ham game it was, the end of that game, and then the Dortmund game went off the first 15 minutes, so hasn't been seen since then. Will be a welcome boost as we understand it. Obviously understand Eddie Howe not wanting to give much away when your £63 million striker is sort of touch and go, if you like, publicly anyway. Privately, I imagine he's fine and has been training okay. So yeah, big boost, but they have to look after him, manage his load, because we've looked, there's how many games? It's double figures games.
I think it's 11 games between now and the end.
So yeah, it's a lot, and we've got obviously Chelsea on Saturday, PSG on the Tuesday night, then Manchester United, Everton, Spurs. It's a hectic run these next 2 weeks, and you're not going to have Callum Wilson for any of those games. So Alexander Isak will have to be managed properly, his load managed properly. He's still relatively young as a player. He didn't have too many injuries before he came to Newcastle, really, particularly not long injuries, but since he's been here now, he's missed a month as it stands, and last season he missed pretty much the first half of last season. So yeah, Newcastle will be mindful of that, and we'll have to look after him moving forward. But Sean Longstaff, yeah, I think he's another one where it's 50-50. If he doesn't feature in this game, you'd imagine he'd probably be back in contention for the next Premier League game against Manchester United, if not the PSG trip, where you imagine he might make the trip anyway, because Newcastle are so short of players and have to name those sort of homegrown academy products on the bench, if you like, and Sean Longstaff ticks that box.
Yeah. Sean Longstaff, yeah, I think the term Eddie Howe used was analysing and checking ahead of that Chelsea game tomorrow. As it sounds now, probably is a doubt, but as you mentioned there, should be back for next week's game against Manchester United. at least if he doesn't make tomorrow. Another injury update, Sven Bateman. Again, keeping his cards close to his chest. Eddie Howe, when he was asked about him, Dom?
Yeah, I think we could go a bit deep on this Sven Bateman stuff, because Liam said he saw him the other day. He didn't look right. We've heard conflicting things. He's back training, or he might need surgery. There's a massive spectrum of just where Sven Bateman's injury stands, and he hasn't played in it's almost 2 months now since that Sheffield United game where he scored in, as it happens, and didn't suffer an injury in that game. It's happened away from the training, away from the pitch as such, potentially on the training ground, potentially elsewhere, but they're no further forward really, Newcastle. Eddie Howe mentioned we'll have an understanding of the injury, but still
he didn't want to tell her.
Well, yeah, you could say
that's
that.
what he said.
Yeah.
Didn't want to tell her.
But does that mean Sven Bateman needs surgery? Could he be back sooner rather than later? We just simply do not know.
He done like a circle at Eddie House. He was like, yeah, we're hoping we can get him back pretty quickly, but then said that might change as well. So he almost like left it open where there's a chance Sven Bateman might return quite soon. Because I think the situation, as we understand it, is he's obviously got a knee problem. There's been times when Newcastle have put him out to train with a team or individually, and the knee swelled back up. So Newcastle now are in a situation where they're going to keep putting more workload on Botman, and they're hoping that knee doesn't swell back up. If it does, then it goes back to what Eddie Howe said probably a month ago now, surgery. But yeah, I think we're probably no clearer on the situation. In fact, that we just hope that we rock up on the Spenton training ground one Friday and Eddie Howe confirms that Sven Botman's in the squad for the next game. But he would never do that. I think the only way we'll find out when Sven Botman's fit is when he's named on the team sheet for a game, unless obviously we get information ourselves.
But the Sven Botman one was interesting because it was initially spoken about as if it was short term. He'd be back maybe a few weeks after that October international break, but he wasn't, and then it's sort of gone on and become a longer term issue. What you could say to that is Jamal Lascelles stepping into the side. He's been given his time to shine, if you like, and has put in some really impressive performances. Probably been found out at times, particularly the Bournemouth game, the Dortmund game hasn't been to the levels he set, particularly I thought against PSG and Man City when he first came into the side was exceptional, and it looked like Sven Botman wasn't missed at all. But I think Sven Botman's such an important player to the way Newcastle playing it out from the back. He's a lovely sort of complement to Fabian Schär on that left hand side, but now we've seen Fabian Schär switch over to the left, and actually you could say with Jamal Lascelles, different sort of player, very much a traditional centre half, but Fabian Schär switching out to the left has actually upped his game as well. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think we were saying for weeks that the standard mark for Fabian Schär in our player ratings was 8 out of 10, and I think the only performance that you could probably question this season was probably the Bournemouth one, but that wasn't just Fabian Schär, that was bar probably Nick Pope, 10 players on that pitch that just didn't reach the levels that they have hit, and that was because of the games that they played and the busy schedule. I think that all came ahead against Bournemouth. So I think this 2-week international break, you'd hope, although Newcastle haven't got too many players back from injury, as I say, possibly only Alexander Isak tomorrow, that'll return. I mean, obviously Miguel Almiron as well, but he did play against Bournemouth, so the fresh new face in that squad will likely be Alexander Isak. So it's still a very difficult situation for Newcastle, and I suppose, touching upon that as well, I think Eddie Howe, when he mentioned injuries, I think he mentioned that there would a few be back in December. Who those few are, I'm trying to think at the top of my head now. I think possibly Harvey Barnes, one person asked about. That could be one. Now, when I asked him a few weeks ago about Harvey Barnes, I thought he hinted the fact that he might be back a little bit earlier. When I asked him today, I think the suggestions is that he's probably on course for a return towards the end of December. Around the Christmas period, yeah.
He said he was on course, on track to be back for the original date, and the original date that Eddie Howe gave was the back end of December. But when I asked him a few weeks ago, he actually said, he won't be back too long after the international break. So
does that mean the same thing? I don't know.
You said potential U-turn, Dom, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. I mean, hopefully he's back sooner. If Eddie Howe's talking about a few players coming back in December, he's the first one that springs to mind. I'm trying to think of a couple of other players. Obviously, Elliot Anderson, I think, will be back. Callum Wilson,
Callum Wilson's probably the next
but a lot of them are later December, really. So if you're looking at that situation, Newcastle are actually going to have to go another 4 weeks with the same squad. And yeah, we used the term about wrapping Alexander Isak up in cotton wool. There's going to have to be the same situation for several others as well. Should we move on to January, I think?
Well, I guess we touched on Bruno the other day. He's back
Yes.
in the side, big boost.
Massive.
Lewis Hall can't play against his parent club. Eddie Howe spoke about Lewis Hall still having a lot to learn in his game, but he's been pleased with what he's brought to the side. And then I asked, does Lewis Hall's absence sort of shoe in Tino Livramento for his first Premier League start? Not expecting Eddie Howe to say, oh yeah, it does, but he did say he's one of the players in contention. He also said, we've got a few others in contention, which I'm not sure who that is. Paul Dummett, Javier Manquillo, maybe that's a silent injury boost. But yeah, Tino Livramento, he's played 3 games, 90 minutes for Newcastle in the cup competitions, which shows his fitness levels after such a big injury which ruled him out for pretty much all of last season at Southampton, and then has played 90 minutes and 45 minutes during the international break for England under 21. So to be honest, I'd expect him to start, whether it's a right back or left back, and Kieran Trippier on the opposite side. We'll wait and see, but certainly no concerns over his fitness and ability to play 90 minutes, which is so important in Eddie Howe's side. You get new signings, you see Anthony Gordon, for example, Lewis Hall's another player, struggle to play 90 minutes and reach those sort of levels of intensity Newcastle and Eddie Howe demand with their play style, but it certainly looks like there's no problems in that regard regarding Tino Livramento, so would expect him to start on Saturday. Anyone else you want to talk about in terms of your team, how you would like to see Newcastle line up?
Yeah, I'm just conscious because we've actually got a Newcastle United coach to the right of us here setting up, so I wonder if Newcastle are actually training indoors today. So this might have to be a quick wrap up unless we restart.
We'll just go in there.
Right, yes. Well, we'll see you in a couple of seconds.
So yeah, here we are from the sanctuary of Jordan's car. We got kicked out of the press room. It's far too windy outside, you wouldn't be able to hear us. So I'll go back to my point. Jordan, Chelsea on Saturday. What changes would you make to the Newcastle side after that defeat at Bournemouth before the international break?
Yeah, I think probably a couple of more feels enforced. I mean, you look at the likes of Bruno, who's come back from suspension. He's got to play. I mean, there's a stat doing the rounds in the middle of the week or last week, whenever it was, that I think Newcastle have, since Bruno made his full debut for Newcastle, there's been 8 games since then. Newcastle have failed to win a Premier League game since, so that their stat speaks for itself. So he'll have to come into midfield. I'd imagine probably for young Lewis Miley, who I thought was, decent on his debut, but in terms of seniority, experience is the natural choice to drop out. You're then going to be forced into a change at fullback with Lewis Hall unable to play, so Tino Livramento comes in there. Well, that's Kieran Trippier that switches over to left back and Tino Livramento goes right back. We'll have to wait and see on that, but obviously that's an obvious change. And the final one as well has to be Alexander Isak. Only Eddie Howe and the coaches and people within the football club know his full fitness situation, but if he is fit to start, then he has to. I think Newcastle would probably want to get at least 60 minutes into him, so probably bear in mind that PSG game on Tuesday as well, so you might see Alexander Isak start, play the opening hour, or it might be a situation in PSG where he comes on for the final half an hour, does 60 minutes then. I don't think we'll see Alexander Isak start both games. I say that actually out loud. I mean, have they got a choice? They'll probably have to start him for both games. But again, as I spoke of previously, earlier in the video, they have to manage his workload. So that would be the changes for me. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, who would drop in Isak out for? Is it going to be Sean Longstaff? He's probably the natural one. If he is a doubt at all, otherwise you're looking at a Joe Willock or a Joe Linton potentially, which I don't think Eddie Howe will do. So I think Sean Longstaff is the natural person if he is a doubt, but again, another very important player to Eddie Howe's side. And the rest, I think Tino Livramento should start, deserves to start. he'll be his first Premier League start for the club, and it's been a long time coming. And then Bruno picks himself if he's fit. So yeah, welcome return for him to the side. Hopefully Newcastle can get the results and get back to winning ways on the pitch after 2 disappointing 2-0 defeats before the international break. But yeah, moving on, Jordan, you wanted to speak about transfers. You asked about transfers. Eddie Howe was asked about transfers, obviously in the wake of the Saudi Pro League. I say the Saudi Pro League vote. It was a Premier League vote on owner-related parties, multi-club organisations, basically doing deals, loan deals between themselves, which I think Eddie Howe wasn't. He was keen to stress that it wasn't a Newcastle vote, even though to us and the media have probably wrapped it up as if it has been, because they are the club that would benefit the most because of the strength of the Saudi Pro League and the PIF owned clubs in it.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel like a vote to try and stop Newcastle. I mean, we spoke about in the previous video again I'll give that one a plug in midweek.
Thank you everyone for watching that, by the way. We thought 35 minutes would be a bit of a slog for some people, but no, people tuned in and people seem to enjoy it. So well, if you enjoy that, more of that to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, just on that PL vote, Premier League vote, it felt the timing of it was interesting, and that's why it felt like it was aimed at Newcastle. As you mentioned there, Eddie Howe keen to stress that it wasn't just about Newcastle, and he said that he found the headlines. I think he found the headlines about the Saudi Pro League and Newcastle United not being able to, or would be able to loan players in the Saudi Pro League. I think he called it strange. Whether that's a little, not a dig, but maybe a little, not us personally, but a lot of the national reports were on the back of the Premier League vote was Newcastle now able to sign players, or still able to sign players from the Saudi Pro League. And I suppose it probably ties in with January. I mean, we don't want to talk too much about the Premier League vote because, as I say, we've done that in the previous video. Again, I'm plugging that. I suppose the only other update from the press conference, if you like, was the January transfer window. I say update again. Eddie Howe doesn't give too much away, but he did say that Newcastle may have to be reactive in the transfer window rather than plan strategically because of all these injuries. I think he said that they would look at the January transfer window close at the end of December, once you know the injury situation. They're hopeful of getting a few players back, and how that leaves them in January will dictate their transfer plans. I asked him if there was funds, if he understood there was funds there to go and strengthen. Again, said that he hadn't spoken about it with people at the top yet, and then again reiterated the fact that they need to be reactive in the window. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what they do, Dom.
Yeah, we spoke at length about. I think I'd be surprised if Newcastle do any business with Saudi Pro League clubs, if I'm being honest. But I think we spoke the other day, Calvin Phillips would be the sort of ideal target for them if they could get him in on loan. You're not sort of blowing away a large portion of your transfer budget, and as well as you're getting, I wouldn't say cover, but it's almost like a half-season replacement for Sandro Tonali, who Eddie Howe did mention and said it's almost frustrating because he's continued to train and he's training better than he's ever trained. And I guess he could say that because who are we to argue otherwise? But he said it's frustrating that he can't play because he's training really, really well at the moment. So yeah, January probably can't come soon enough, really, but hopefully in the next month or so, Newcastle have a few players back from injury. We're going to welcome hopefully a couple back this weekend, if not next week with Sean Longstaff as well. And then you're looking further forward with the likes of Harvey Barnes, Elliot Anderson, Callum Wilson, and then into the new year with Jacob Murphy, Dan Burn, Matt Targett, and then Sven Bateman. We'll wait and see what happens there. So yeah, a lot to talk about, but we'll be back at St James's Park, myself and Jordan, joined by Liam Kennedy.
He won't be there tomorrow, Liam.
Oh, is he not?
No, he's not there tomorrow. It's Geordie Journal's breaking news. He is in the stands tomorrow because it is his...
Yes, I remember that.
It is his son's birthday, so it'll just be us two.
Oh well, Liam wasn't here today. He was too busy ringing me and trying to get hold of me, but
Likes to do that.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. In the spirit of Liam Kennedy as well, how could we forget his motto? Please like, share subscribe, ring the bell, do all that, and we'll see you on the next Geordie Journos video. Cheers.